It was a quiet Wednesday night in Georgia, one that would be burned into the hearts of everyone who knew and loved Bernicia Lightfoot. What should have been a night of laughter and celebration turned into something far darker. Calls went straight to voicemail. Texts were left unread. And for a family that never missed a birthday celebration, the silence was more than strange, it was chilling. She would never miss her birthday week. Her sister later told investigators, tears choking her voice. Never. Something happened. I just know it. At the time, no one could have imagined just how right she would be. What unfolded in the days that followed would capture headlines, fracture a community, and raise difficult questions about trust, love, and the people we let into our lives. Bernicia Lightfoot, or as her growing fan base knew her, Alada, wasn't just another aspiring rapper in a competitive music scene. She had presence. She had talent. And she had momentum. With more than 24,000 Instagram followers, Alada was known for her raw, unfiltered lyrics that told the story of her life, unpolished, real, and deeply human. She wasn't just chasing fame, she was speaking her truth, and people were starting to listen. But there was another side to her that many didn't see on social media. Beyond the flashy photos and freestyle videos, Bernicia was a mentor, a role model, and a protector. Through her work with the Wolfpack Gunshot Response Team, she taught young people life-saving skills, CPR, trauma response, and how to stay calm in chaos. She wasn't just rising in music, she was rising in her community. The week of July 17th should have been filled with birthday celebrations. Friends had secretly planned a gathering. Family members had already wrapped her gifts. Everyone was waiting to surprise her. But Alada never showed up. Her phone, usually buzzing with messages, music promotions, and memes, went completely silent. She posted every day, one friend said. She was never offline. Not for this long. As the hours turned into days, worry gave way to panic. The people who knew her best could feel something was wrong, and soon, they would be proven right. Then, just like that, nothing. No updates. No texts. No posts. Not even a single notification from Alada on the day before her birthday. A day she never, ever missed. For anyone else, maybe a short digital break wouldn't be alarming. But this wasn't like her at all. What made her sudden silence even more unsettling was her last known activity online. On July 14th, Alada had posted a TikTok. It featured her boyfriend, Michael Rorty, and her sister. The video had a light-hearted, almost playful tone, but the caption hinted at an argument. At the time, no one thought much of it. Maybe it was just couple drama, something small. But in hindsight, that video would take on an eerie significance. That brief, casual moment would become the final digital footprint of a young woman who had suddenly vanished. As July 17th, her birthday, came and went, the silence became unbearable. Friends and family, refusing to wait, launched into action. They called. They texted. They drove to her Bedford apartment over and over again, hoping to see her car, her light on, anything. But every attempt ended the same way, with no sign of Alada. For someone so grounded, so responsible, and so consistent, her sudden disappearance didn't just raise red flags. It screamed that something was deeply, dangerously wrong. She would walk through fire to spend her birthday with us, one mentor, Sunsir Ali Shakur, would later say. The only explanation is that something catastrophic happened. 48 hours passed. Still no answer. No returned messages. No clue where she was. And so, on July 18th, her family made a decision no loved one ever wants to make. They picked up the phone, called Bedford police, and asked for a welfare check. The voice on the other end of that call, her sister's, was trembling. "Please," she begged the dispatcher. "Something's wrong. She would never disappear like this." Officers were dispatched to the small, quiet apartment complex in Bedford. At first, they expected a routine check, maybe a misunderstanding. Maybe she just needed space. But what they found when they arrived sent chills through the responding unit. Neither Alada nor Michael Rorty were inside the apartment. But the space itself told a very different story. Scattered in the front yard, a cell phone was discovered. It was soon confirmed to belong to Alada. It was dirty, cracked, and intentionally discarded, as if someone had tried to get rid of it in a hurry. Inside the apartment, police began a slow, careful sweep. What they found was nothing short of horrifying. According to official reports from Deputy Police Chief Rick Sutz, the scene showed clear signs of a violent altercation. There was blood. There were signs of a struggle, overturned furniture, broken glass, personal items strewn about in a way that made no logical sense unless someone had been fighting to survive. To the trained eyes of law enforcement, the conclusion was unavoidable. This wasn't a missing persons case anymore, one officer later remarked. This was a crime scene. From this point forward, everything would change. The search for Alada had begun in fear. Now, it was escalating into something far darker. Sometimes, what you don't find is just as revealing as what you do. That was certainly the case inside Alada's apartment. Her purse was still there, sitting on a nearby table, untouched. But oddly, her identification was gone. Her ID, something she never left home without, had vanished. It was a subtle detail, but for detectives, it was one of the first signs that whatever had happened here wasn't random. And then there was the other glaring absence. Her boyfriend, Michael Rorty Nugent. He was nowhere to be found. What started as a welfare check had now taken a sharp turn. This was no longer a search for a missing person. This was the beginning of a possible homicide investigation. And within hours, the city of Cleveland, Ohio, would be rocked by the tragic fate of one of its most promising young voices. But to understand how devastating this loss truly was, you have to go back. You have to know who Bernicia Lightfoot was, before the fame, before the music, before the headlines. She was born and raised right in the heart of Cleveland, in neighborhoods where opportunities were scarce, but hope was everything. Her beginnings were modest. She didn't grow up with luxury, but she was rich in something far more powerful: determination. She was different, even as a kid, one childhood friend recalled. You could just tell she was going somewhere. Where most children played without a care in the world, young Bernicia was quietly learning a lesson that would shape her life. That in her world, success wouldn't come easy. It would have to be earned twice over. By the time she hit her teenage years, that lesson had taken root. She wasn't just dreaming of a better future, she was building it. At just 18 years old, when many of her peers were still deciding what to do with their lives, she was already clocking long shifts in a factory, working alongside men and women twice her age. She never complained, said her former supervisor, Marcus Jenkins. Never missed a shift. Always showed up 15 minutes early. Always. That kind of work ethic wasn't common, not for someone her age. It didn't just earn her respect. It earned her a reputation. She became known as the one who could be counted on. The one who didn't make excuses. The one who showed up, even when it was hard. And that wasn't just true on the job. It was true in school, too. Her high school teachers described her as a standout, not just academically, but in how she balanced street smarts with book smarts. She wasn't just intelligent, her former English teacher explained. She was strategic. She knew that in Cleveland, talent without hustle gets you nowhere. That combination, grit, focus, and charisma, made her someone people remembered. Someone people looked up to. But the one thing that stood out most to everyone who knew her? Her reliability. If Alada said she was going to do something, she did it. If she made a promise, she kept it. Her word was gold, said her best friend Tasha. Her commitment was iron. You could literally set your watch by her. So when she stopped responding to calls, when she didn't show up for her birthday, when she missed appointments, messages, events, everyone who knew her understood one thing instantly. This wasn't just strange. This was dangerous. This is why her disappearance was impossible to accept for anyone who truly knew her. It wasn't just out of character, it was unthinkable. Because Alada, known off stage as Bernicia Lightfoot, wasn't just another name in Cleveland. She was becoming a movement. Under her stage name Alada, she had been carving out a unique and powerful presence in Cleveland's highly competitive hip-hop scene. A space that was tough, often unforgiving, and male-dominated. But none of that fazed her. By early 2023, her Instagram had swelled to over 24,000 followers. And she didn't have a label. No agent. No PR team. Everything she built from the ground up. That's what made her success so special, said local music producer Devin Williams. She wasn't backed by some big machine. It was just her truth, and her grind. Her music wasn't just catchy, it was real. Each verse was a slice of her life. Her lyrics told raw, honest stories that resonated deeply, especially with young women growing up in similar environments. Her flow wasn't just tight, it was authentic, Devin added. She wasn't acting like someone she wasn't. She wasn't mimicking what was trendy. Alada rapped the truth, and people felt that. That authenticity is what made her stand out. And it was paying off. Streaming numbers were climbing. Local performances were drawing bigger and bigger crowds. Music blogs had started featuring her, and not just in Ohio. She was on the verge, said rapper Jay Sino, who collaborated with her on 2 tracks. The energy in the studio with her? Different. She treated every session like it was a job interview for her future. She didn't party her way through the scene. She worked. From promotion, to networking, to late-night recording sessions, Alada took her career seriously. Every beat she selected, every bar she wrote, every show she booked, all of it was done with precision and purpose. She approached music the same way she approached life, with discipline, Sino added. Her final released track, titled Cleveland Made Me, was a tribute to her roots. It was honest, gritty, and filled with pride, but it also acknowledged the harsh realities of the city that raised her. That track had started to spread beyond Cleveland, earning mentions on underground blogs and indie music channels. Some insiders whispered that she was just months away from national recognition. She was that close. But here's what made her truly remarkable. Even more than the music, the followers, or the spotlight, Alada's heart was in her community. When she wasn't in the studio, she was out in the streets of Cleveland, saving lives. Literally. She dedicated her time to the Wolfpack Gunshot Response Team, a grassroots organization teaching everyday people how to react to life-threatening injuries, from gunshots to stabbings, even bomb wounds. In neighborhoods plagued by violence, these weren't theoretical lessons. They were survival skills. She wasn't just trying to get out of the hood, said one volunteer. She was trying to lift it up with her. She worked especially with children, showing them how to stop bleeding, apply pressure, call for help, giving them tools that could mean the difference between life and death. She was becoming a local hero, both on and off the mic. And that's what made what happened next all the more devastating. The news broke like a thunderclap. After days of silence, headlines finally gave voice to what so many had feared. Man charged with killing his girlfriend appeared in court today. Those were the chilling opening words of a breaking report that aired across Ohio and quickly spread beyond. The victim? Bernicia Lightfoot, known to thousands as Alada, a rising star, a community leader, and a young woman who simply vanished during the week of her birthday. Now, her name was appearing next to the word homicide. Her body had been found in the woods, discarded like trash. No dignity, no farewell, just abandoned. Her body was found in the woods, one reporter said solemnly. Disregarded, disrespected. The man charged? Michael Rody Nent, her live-in boyfriend. Onlookers watched as he stood in Bedford Municipal Court for the first time since the murder charge had been filed. There was no emotion on his face, no apology, no words at all. Instead, his defense attorney entered a technical plea of not guilty as the judge, Michelle Paris, listened closely. But what came next was perhaps the most jarring moment of the day. Bail is set at $2 million, Judge Paris declared. The courtroom was silent. $2 million. That was the cost the system placed on the man accused of taking Alada's life. As more details emerged, a painful timeline began to take shape. It started the week of July 17th. The week Alada should have been surrounded by family and friends, celebrating another year of life. But instead, her family found themselves reporting her missing. She didn't answer her phone on her birthday, investigators later confirmed. And that wasn't like her at all. There was already history that made everyone uneasy. According to Alada's family, Michael had a violent past, and not just in general. He had been abusive and controlling toward Alada herself. The relationship was volatile, something Alada had reportedly been trying to end. We tried to get her to leave him, said one family member. But it's never that simple. That's why, when she stopped answering calls, they feared the worst. And sadly, they were right. Police quickly launched a welfare check, beginning their search near Alada's Bedford apartment. There, they found something chilling. Her phone, tossed in a yard near East 59th and Chester. Just thrown away. Silent. Like she had been. But technology leaves traces. Private security camera footage from homes and businesses in the area revealed something key. Michael Rorty had been seen near the exact spot where her phone was found. He was in the neighborhood, at the right time, in the right place, and the wrong story was beginning to come together. The footage, combined with physical evidence from the apartment and interviews with Alada's family, began to point in one direction. It was becoming clearer by the day. This wasn't a disappearance. This was an execution, and the man who once claimed to love her was now the one standing in court, charged with ending her life. When Bedford police arrived at Bernicia Lightfoot's Colony Club apartment, they weren't prepared for what they were about to discover. Inside the unit, Officers were met with a scene that told a terrifying story, even without a single word spoken. There was blood, a large amount of dried blood, in fact, pooled, smeared, staining the floor in a way that no amount of cleaning could truly erase. And it didn't stop there. The walls bore something even more haunting: bullet holes. Evidence of a shooting, of panic, of violence that escalated to lethal levels. Someone, had clearly been seriously injured in that apartment. Police wasted no time canvassing the area. Neighbors were interviewed, and soon, the missing pieces of that grim night began falling into place. Multiple witnesses reported hearing gunshots in the early hours of July 17, 2023, just before sunrise. One neighbor reported a disturbing sound of commotion. A scuffle, a struggle, and then silence. But one witness saw more than just shadows and noise. "I saw him," the witness recalled. "I saw Rorty dragging something. It looked like a body. It was wrapped in something. He was pulling it down the stairs." That report would soon be tragically confirmed. On Friday, for agonizing days after she vanished, the search came to an end. Bernicia's body was found, discarded in a wooded area near East 64th Street and Francis Avenue, in Cleveland's Broadway Slavic Village neighborhood. The location said everything. Hidden, distant, cold, a far cry from the warmth and joy she brought to others. Not long after the discovery, police arrested Michael Rodinette. And this time, there were no denials, no cover stories, no confusion. He confessed. During a police interview, Rorty admitted to shooting Bernicia in the early morning hours of July 17th. He also led detectives to the weapon he had used, the same firearm that ended her life. And with that, the puzzle was no longer missing pieces. It had become a complete, horrifying picture. The case is now in the hands of Cuyahoga County, where prosecutors will handle the legal proceedings moving forward. Michael Rorty will face his next court appearance in Bedford, but justice, true justice, will be decided in Cleveland's courts. Yet even amid the grief, Bernicia's memory continues to shine, especially in the hearts of those she inspired. "Bernicia wasn't just trying to escape poverty or pain," said Sansar Ali Shakur, founder of the Wolfpack Gunshot Response Team and her longtime mentor. "She wanted to pull others out too. That's who she was." To him, she wasn't just a student. She was my brightest, the one who went from student to teacher in record time. In the Wolfpack program, which teaches critical first aid response in high-risk neighborhoods, Miss Bernicia became a legend. Children who ignored other instructors would fall silent the moment she stepped up to teach. She made learning about tourniquets and wound care less scary, more empowering. "She had this gift," said one community member. "She could take life-saving techniques and turn them into something kids wanted to learn. She had patience. She had presence. She had purpose." Whether she was gently demonstrating how to stop a bleed to a fidgety 10-year-old or calmly explaining pressure techniques to worried parents, she always showed up with love. Love and leadership that now lives on only in memory. At the community center, the director Marlene Thompson said she was known for preparing kids for harsh realities without traumatizing them. She had a gift, explaining life or death situations with honesty and hope. "She never sugarcoated anything," said Kesha Williams, a mother of 3. "But she made sure the kids felt powerful, not afraid." Marlene often told them, "Knowledge is power. What I'm teaching you might save your best friend someday." The tragic irony wasn't lost on anyone, that a woman so committed to stopping violence became a victim of it. "She saved lives," said Shakur at her memorial, "and she had so many more to save." While Bernicia Lightfoot, known as Alada, built a legacy through music and service, the man accused of ending her life, Michael Rorty, had walked a very different path. Michael had been in and out of trouble with Cleveland law enforcement for over a decade. What began as minor drug charges in his early 20s soon escalated. By 2013, he faced multiple weapons violations and, more alarmingly, repeated domestic violence incidents. He had restraining orders but minimal jail time. Each case painted a pattern of rising danger, one that experts say is often overlooked. His record showed classic escalation, said Dr. Renee Martinez, a domestic violence expert. There were periods of calm, then the violence would spike again. That's what makes it so dangerous. By 2022, Rorty had charges in 3 different Ohio counties, but plea deals kept him free. People who knew him described a man who could charm a room, then lose control without warning. This dual nature, likable on the surface, violent underneath, would later be described in court as a perfect storm, one that went unnoticed until it was too late. Friends say Bernicia's relationship with Michael Rorty started like many others: chemistry, affection, and what seemed like love. They were together for about 8 months before her death. But over time, those closest to her began to notice subtle, yet concerning, changes. She was still Bernicia, her producer recalled, but sometimes she seemed distracted. She'd check her phone constantly, cancel last minute, which she never used to do. She began missing studio sessions, skipped community events. For someone as committed and dependable as Bernicia, this was unusual. Friends also reported hearing arguments in the background during calls. But if they asked, she'd brush it off or change the subject. Then came her final TikTok on July 14th, just days before her disappearance. In the video, she appeared with her sister and Rorty. It was captioned, "POV, when you argue with your man, he's finally not wrong, and your sister takes his side." What seemed like a joke carried an eerie undertone. She added in the comments, "I thought we was family. You supposed to ride if I'm right or wrong. And I'm never wrong, even when I'm wrong." What was she trying to say? Her comment, the tension in the video, it now feels less like humor and more like a cry for help. As we look deeper into Bernicia's final days, it's important to pause and reflect. How often do we miss warning signs? How many red flags get explained away as just stress or normal couple stuff? The withdrawal from loved ones, the hyper-focus on their partner's texts, the last-minute cancellations. These aren't just personality shifts. Sometimes they're signs of control, isolation, or even danger. If you see these signs in someone you care about, don't stay silent. Ask questions. Offer support. Trust your gut. And if you've noticed similar patterns in your circle, let us know in the comments below. You just might help someone else recognize the signs. Have you ever spotted red flags in a friend's relationship? Did you speak up or keep quiet? What made that choice so hard? Sharing your experience might give someone else the courage to step in before it's too late. Recognizing those early warning signs is the first crucial step toward prevention. Your awareness could truly save a life. After the alarming findings at Bernicia's apartment on July 18th, Bedford police quickly launched a two-front search for both Bernicia and Michael Rorty. Within hours, authorities issued a bolo, "Be on the lookout," for Rorty's vehicle, and Bernicia was officially listed as missing under suspicious circumstances. Deputy Police Chief Rick Sutz stressed the urgency at a press conference. "We had 2 missing persons, clear signs of violence, and serious concern for Miss Lightfoot's safety." Time was running out. Detectives immediately began contacting Bernicia's friends and associates, while tech specialists worked tirelessly to piece together a timeline from her phone and social media. At the same time, Cleveland's tight-knit hip-hop community rallied with incredible speed. By the evening of July 19th, dozens of volunteers organized search parties, focusing on places Bernicia loved and frequented. Fellow artists used their platforms to spread awareness, sharing her photo across social media and local businesses. Her mentor, Sunsur Ali Shakur, teamed up with the Wolfpack Gunshot Response Team to set up a volunteer command center at their community hub, turning grief into action. Have you ever had a moment where one tiny detail unraveled an entire mystery? That moment came on July 20th, just 2 days after Bernicia Lightfoot's family reported her missing. Authorities obtained surveillance footage that showed a vehicle registered to Michael Rorty driving near the Cleveland-Bedford border around 3 a.m. on July 18th. That single timestamp became the turning point. Investigators now had a crucial time marker, an anchor to begin rebuilding the hours leading up to Bernicia's disappearance. At the apartment Bernicia and Michael once shared, the investigation was ramping up fast. Bedford forensic teams had begun their detailed sweep of the space, and what they found was both telling and chilling. First was her phone, discarded in the yard. Detectives confirmed it was hers using digital identification, and its location outside raised even more red flags. Inside the home, things looked even darker. Blood, and not just in one spot. It appeared in multiple areas, traces on the floor, splatter on the walls, and faint streaks along the hallway. Then came the luminol. When sprayed, the chemical lit up areas that someone had tried to clean. Particularly in the bathroom and hallway, the glow told a story. There had been a violent confrontation, and someone had desperately tried to erase it. Detective Marcus Johnson would later call the scene deliberate and deceptive. This wasn't panic, this was cover-up. Under the bathroom sink, hidden in a wad of towels, officers discovered a kitchen knife with traces of blood. That knife, like a buried secret, would later become one of the most damning pieces of evidence. But perhaps the most haunting discovery was in the bedroom closet. Tucked away behind hanging clothes was a duffel bag. Inside were bundles of cash, ID cards, and neatly folded clothes, clear signs someone was preparing to disappear. Then came the security footage from the apartment complex itself. Cameras showed Rorty's vehicle pulling out of the parking lot at exactly 2:47 a.m. on July 18th. Less than 2 hours later, at 4:22 a.m., it returned, only briefly, before driving off again. Investigators now had visual proof of Michael's comings and goings during the window of time Bernicia went missing. But the tech trail didn't end there. Cell tower data, social media activity, and digital footprints began forming a disturbing picture of how Rorty may have tried to cover his tracks, until the evidence caught up with him. And still, the most pressing question remained. Where was Bernicia? In the weeks leading up to her disappearance, Bernicia Lightfoot had been searching for a way out. An analysis of her laptop would later reveal heartbreaking evidence. Search queries about relationship counseling and how to safely leave a controlling boyfriend. It painted a picture of a young woman quietly preparing for an exit, but unsure how to do so without risking everything. Then came her final message. At 11:38 p.m. on July 17th, just hours before she vanished, Bernicia sent a text to her sister. It was short, just 5 words. "We're arguing again. We'll call you tomorrow." That call never came. For days later, on July 21st, everything changed. A Cleveland resident walking his dog through an overgrown patch of land in Slavic Village noticed something unusual near an abandoned industrial lot. He called it in. Within hours, police confirmed what everyone feared. The body belonged to Bernicia Lightfoot. The coroner's report was sobering: multiple stab wounds and defensive injuries. She had fought back. She had tried to survive. The location, roughly 7 miles from her Bedford apartment, matched up with something else. Rorty's cell phone had pinged off towers in that exact area around 3 a.m. on July 18th. That digital breadcrumb was the lead detectives needed. Later that same afternoon, a gas station clerk just outside Akron recognized Michael Rorty from news reports. He called it in. Officers swarmed a nearby motel and found Rorty inside. He was arrested without incident. In his possession, Bernicia's ID and credit cards. During transport back to Cleveland, officers noted that he said nothing. Not a word about the young woman whose life he had allegedly taken. Even with her body found, he offered no explanation. No remorse. Just silence. On July 24, 2023, the city of Bedford got the news it had been waiting for. Deputy Police Chief Rick Sutz stood before reporters and made the announcement. "While nothing can undo this tragedy," he said solemnly, "we can confirm the individual responsible is in custody and will face justice." Michael Rorty Nugent was formally arraigned that same day. The charges were severe: first-degree murder, tampering with evidence, gross abuse of a corpse, and theft. Judge Dina R. Calabrese, respected for her work on domestic violence cases, set bail at $2 million, ensuring Rorty would remain behind bars until trial. Over the following months, the prosecution built their case brick by brick. Led by veteran prosecutor Eleanor Simmons, the state presented digital forensics, phone records, and blood evidence linking Rorty to both the apartment and his vehicle. The medical examiner's testimony struck hardest, confirming that the kitchen knife found under the bathroom sink matched Bernicia's wounds. This wasn't a moment of rage, Simmons told the jury during her opening. This was the end result of control, manipulation, and escalating violence. Rorty's defense, led by attorney Martin Keller, argued the case was built on circumstantial evidence. He suggested police zeroed in on Rorty too quickly, ignoring other leads. The trial began in January 2024 and lasted 7 tense days. Judge Calabrese kept tight control of the courtroom, especially during emotional testimonies from Bernicia's loved ones. Her decision to allow Rorty's past domestic violence history into evidence would later prove pivotal. After 14 hours of jury deliberation, the verdict came in on February 9th. Michael Rorty Nugent was found guilty, not of first-degree murder, but of involuntary manslaughter. The jury believed the act lacked premeditation, but they held him accountable. He was also convicted of tampering with evidence and abuse of a corpse. Sentencing was scheduled for February 23rd. On that day, the courtroom overflowed with people wearing shirts with Allah's face and lyrics printed on them. It wasn't just a sentencing, it was a memorial. Her sister spoke through tears. You didn't just take her life. You took her voice, her art, her impact. This community didn't just lose a daughter. We lost a protector. At sentencing, the courtroom fell silent as Bernicia's sister faced Michael Rorty Nugent directly. You didn't just take her life, she said. You took everything she would have accomplished, every life she would have touched, every child she would have taught to save others. Judge Dina Calibris then delivered her ruling. The court recognizes that no sentence can restore what was lost, she said. But this sentence reflects the severity of your actions and your long history of escalating violence. Rorty was given the maximum sentence, 23 to 28 and a half years at Lorraine Correctional Institution. It was one of the harshest punishments available for involuntary manslaughter under Ohio law. But outside the courtroom, emotions were mixed. There was relief that he'd be off the streets for decades, but also frustration that the jury hadn't delivered a murder conviction. Bernicia's mentor, Sansur Ali Shakur, summed up what many were feeling. The system worked, but it didn't work perfectly, just like it never does for black women. And the question remained, did justice truly prevail for Bernia Lightfoot? Legal experts acknowledged the unusually long sentence, but many advocates saw the reduced charge as yet another example of a painful pattern. Dr. Kimberly Washington, a researcher on racial bias in domestic violence cases, explained, "Time and time again, we see violence against black women treated with less urgency, less outrage, and fewer consequences. For Bernicia's family, the outcome brought complicated closure. Her mother spoke quietly after the hearing. Nothing brings her back, but knowing he'll be locked up until she would have been in her 50s gives us some peace. We just wish the system had stopped him before he took her from us." 3 days later, over 500 people gathered at Market Square Park. Musicians, community leaders, the kids she mentored, and fans who only knew her from her music stood together, candles in hand. The crowd was quiet, heavy with the weight of her absence. Cleveland is no stranger to violence. But this loss hit differently. They weren't just mourning a woman. They were mourning a protector, a healer, a teacher, and an artist whose voice was silenced too soon. In the small, windowless interview room, the tone had shifted. Investigators weren't guessing anymore. They were sure. That's what she's telling us. The detective leaned in. And she's not the only one talking. We've heard from others. Not just family. Not just friends. Strangers saw things too. People with no reason to lie. Michael sat across from them, arms folded, his voice unsteady. Who are the 2 guys you say helped carry her out? The detective didn't blink. No one carried anything. We know that. And you, man, you're not fooling anyone. This ain't the angle you want to take. You go with that story, they'll hit you with everything they've got. Then the detective softened, slightly. But if you're honest, if you say there was a fight, if you show compassion, maybe it helps. But don't sit here and act like we don't know. He paused. Because we do. We don't think you did it. We know you did. Michael stayed quiet, staring at the table. We're just trying to hear your side, man. What led up to it? What pushed it over the edge? Michael finally spoke, low and defensive. How do you know I did it? The detective shook his head. We can't tell you everything. We're not going to risk the people who came forward. But listen, we've got you. From all angles. The question now is, are you going to keep lying, or are you going to tell the truth before it's too late? The silence in that room was louder than any confession. This wasn't just another tragedy, said DJ Smooth, a local radio host who often featured Bernicia's music. When we lose someone like her, someone building real solutions, teaching kids to save lives, it hits harder. It cuts deeper. Fellow artists mourn not only her death, but the silence of a voice that was just beginning to find its power. The collaborations that would never happen. The songs that would never be written. But perhaps the most heartbreaking tribute came from the children. At the candlelight vigil, 10-year-old Jamal, who had attended Bernicia's Wolfpack workshops for 2 years, brought a hand-drawn card. It read, "Who will teach us now?" That single question echoed throughout Cleveland's east side, especially in the community centers where Bernia had been a constant calming force. Sincere Ali Shakur, still visibly shaken at public gatherings, said it best. We didn't just lose a talented young woman. We lost a future leader, a healer, someone who believed surviving wasn't enough. She wanted to teach others how to survive too. But grief became action. In the months following her death, the Wolfpack gunshot response team expanded in her honor. In September 2023, they launched the Al-Ata Legacy Initiative with a bold mission. Train 1,000 Cleveland residents in emergency response by the end of 2024. By March, they had already trained 400 people, twice their previous yearly average. Bernicia always said one trained person could save 10 lives, said Shakur. So now we're building an army of first responders in her name. The initiative focuses on young women. It doesn't just teach CPR and trauma care. It also offers workshops on spotting red flags in relationships and building safety plans, direct answers to the violence that took Bernicia Lightfoot's life. Her voice may be gone, but her mission is louder than ever. Cleveland's hip-hop scene stepped up. In January 2024, they launched the first-ever Alada Showcase, named after Bernicia's stage name. It featured all-female artists performing original songs about community struggles. The event raised over $15,000 for domestic violence prevention programs. Many of the performers said they were inspired by Bernia to use their voices for change. But the biggest victory came in classrooms. 3 Cleveland public schools adopted a modified version of Wolfpack gunshot response training into their health curriculums. Rayshaw always wanted this taught in schools, said her former colleague Tiana Washington. She believed these skills should be as common as knowing your ABCs. Now, hundreds of kids will learn exactly what she wanted to teach. Her music also found a larger audience after her passing. Streaming for her songs surged tenfold. Her friends and fellow artists made sure her voice wasn't silenced. On what would have been her 25th birthday, they released her final project, a posthumous EP titled Cleveland's Daughter. All proceeds go to the Wolfpack team and domestic violence initiatives. A massive mural now covers the eastern wall of the community center where she once taught. It shows Bernicia surrounded by children with the caption, "She taught us how to save lives." Local artists keep the mural fresh, repainting it every year on the anniversary of her death. Other tributes appeared citywide. A bench in Rockefeller Park, her name engraved on Cleveland's Domestic Violence Memorial. An annual scholarship for young women pursuing careers in community health or music. But the greatest tribute? Action. As Sincere Ali Shakur tells volunteers, every time someone teaches what she taught, every life saved by someone she trained or inspired, Bernicia is still working, still saving lives, still changing Cleveland. The red flags we missed. Bernicia's story is filled with painful warning signs we can't afford to ignore. An analysis of her final weeks revealed a pattern. Online searches for how to leave a controlling partner, isolation from friends, canceled plans, a final message saying, "We're arguing again. I'll call you tomorrow." She never did. Domestic violence experts say the most dangerous sign is control, constant monitoring, jealousy, cutting someone off from their support system. Those are flashing red lights, says counselor Maria Hernandez. Other serious indicators include fast-moving relationships, past violence, repeating cycles of tension, outburst, and apology. If someone you love shows these signs, don't wait. The National Domestic Violence Hotline 1-800-799-7233 offers 24/7 confidential help. Local groups, like the Cleveland Domestic Violence Center, provide free risk assessments and safety planning. If someone goes missing like Bernicia did, don't wait 24 hours. That's a myth. Report concerns immediately. Ask for a welfare check and be clear if there's a history of violence. Law enforcement can act faster with specific concerns. Community safety nets matter too. Check-ins, group chats, apps like Circle of Six or SafeTrek can alert loved ones instantly if danger strikes. Her life, her legacy. Bernicia Alada Lightfoot lived to teach others how to survive. And in the cruelest twist, she became a victim of the very violence she fought to prevent. But her death wasn't the end of her impact. Because of her, hundreds have been trained, thousands have listened, and many more are learning to recognize the signs she couldn't outrun. Her story is a warning, a lesson, a call to action. If her story moved you, please like this video, subscribe to True Crime Continent, and share it with someone who might need to hear it. In the comments, we invite you to share your own experiences. Have you recognized red flags in a relationship? Do you know a resource that helps someone you love? Your story might save a life. For immediate help, contact the National Domestic Violence Hotline, 1-800-799-7233. Available 24/7. And remember Bernicia's words, echoed through her music, her students, and her mission. Knowledge saves lives. The life you save may be your own, or someone you love.